Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 11th of July, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host in the studio today is Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And journalist Mark Anderson joins us by video link from the United States. Now, we're going to get kicked off today with a bit more news on Palestine action, but things subsequent to the prescription.
Yes, Mike, there's been a whole raft of arrests right across the country. We'll bring the BBC. Of course, we'll start off with the illustrious BBC or right here on screen here. Man charged under the Terrorism Act 2000 over a Palestine action poster, which is in his window. This is a 38-year-old man from Glasgow. And so if we move on, this particular story is even more egregious here. Armed police threatened to arrest Kent protester for holding a Palestinian flag. And what's amazing about this, Mike, is the police were claiming that slogans like Free Gaza and Israel's genocide are, quote, supportive or deemed to be statements supportive of Palestine action. So you might have views and you might not support the organization, but they could translate that into your views are similar to that of Palestine action, therefore you can't express these views publicly. I mean, it's just pretty incredible. And so many cases like this, we could do 2-hour special just going case by case, the amount of arrests and things like that. So let's just take a look at the legislation here. This is a Terrorism Act 2000, and the key sections here are Section 13. This is brandishing the logo, you could say showing visual support for the organization, the proscribed terrorist organization in this case. And then Section 12, slightly different here, Mike. This is providing what is deemed to be material support for a proscribed organization. So you know, Palestine action as an example here, saying you endorse them, praising them publicly, that's deemed to be, you know, a level of support that's prohibited under the Terrorism Act UK. So as you can imagine, this is a total nightmare. It's completely arbitrarily applied. Nobody really knows. The police, some people have accused the police of just kind of interpreting it as they go. So it's created a whole mess, basically. Now, there's one video which appeared on social media that's absolutely incredible. This gentleman went into the police station to surrender himself. He was injured as well, nursing a bad back, getting ready for, you know, surgery or something like that. So totally incapacitated. And this is a classic video that's kind of gone viral. Watch this scene.
Supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation, and I want to go through the courts, and that's it, nothing else. So I put it in writing and I put it on my social media that I support Palestine Action, and I don't think Palestine Action is a terrorist organisation. Unfortunately, the law has said that they are, and I don't agree with that, and I'm quite happy to basically be taken to court and see what happens. That's it. I don't have anything against the police, and you know, I love you guys, but I've got to do this, because if we don't do this, then as far as I'm concerned, this law may come into effect and no one's going to do anything about it. That's it, nothing else.
You have your details? Yeah. You've dealt with them before? Yeah.
Both know, yeah. We spent hours and hours together.
Yeah, we did. So, as it stands, is we've got a crime report on.
You're going to what?
We've got a crime report on.
Okay.
With you as a suspect for that offence that you quoted, Section 12, Section 13 of the Terrorism Act. Okay. But we know who you are, and there's certainly no code due to arrest. We're not going to be arresting you.
You're not? Okay.
Okay. The reason is, I don't know if you understand what code due is, your solicitor might.
No.
We arrest anyone for offence, it has to be under certain conditions. One of those conditions is, if we don't have an name and address, we can arrest, because obviously he has to deal with you another time if you don't know who you are. Other conditions, there's quite a few conditions, but we don't meet any of those conditions at the moment. So there will be a crime report raised as you as a suspect on the system, and you'll be invited to the stage later to put your side to destroy your head. Do you understand?
You okay?
Okay.
That would be for Section 13, not Section 12.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you can see, they're arresting him, or they said it would be under Section 13.
Right.
Although he's not really in violation of the things that are under Section 13, as we showed just previously, showing the image and so forth. It just so happens, Mike, we have that gentleman on the live link right now. Let's bring him up on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Hussain Shafiei, and he is based in London. This is the gentleman that we just saw in that video who voluntarily surrendered himself into the police station. I'm not sure which branch that was, if that was a special branch for that type of, who investigate that type of crime or cover that end of the law. But I'll call, is it okay if I call you Hawes, Hussain?
Absolutely. Yeah,
so
that's fine.
Hawes, absolutely incredible. Obviously, you're very public about what you did. You really even gave, advance notice that you were going to do this. And so just explain to us, what happened here. Tell us what happened, how it happened, and why you did what you did.
So the first thing that happened was on 2 minutes past 12 o'clock on the 5th of July, an organization which is a direct intervention sort of group like Palestine Action was prescribed a terrorist organization, putting them in the same league as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which it directly isn't. It's nowhere near the same equivalent. And I felt, as a British citizen, I can't sit by and watch this. So I made a declaration on video that I am a supporter of Palestine Action. But to qualify that, I've never been on an operation. I've never funded them. I've never supported them materially. But I do support their right to directly get involved. And because of that, I felt, and I am a British politician as well, I felt it's not right for me to just sit there and watch this group who are effectively trying to shield the children of Gaza from being targeted. And the best way for me to do that is to target the law itself. And the best way you can target this law is to ask for the courts to decide, because we've got a long tradition of civil disobedience in Britain, and that civil disobedience has got a result: the suffragettes, the poll tax, gay rights. Basically, a lot of people don't understand that to be gay many years ago had a sentence of death, but laws change, and civil disobedience is the way to do it. So that's what I decided to do. And I thought there's nothing better than walking up to New Scotland Yard, which is where I went to, first of all, to say, I'd like to be arrested because I am a person that supports Palestine, which has been prescribed a terrorist organization. And it was quite funny, really. They looked at me and said, you've come to the wrong place. Go away. Not interested. Can't arrest you. This is an operational headquarters for the police. And so after saying I support Palestine Action, which is a terrorist action, I was told to go away. I've got a fractured back, which means I can't stand up for long. So I ended up sitting outside of Scotland Yard waiting to rest my back up to be able to move to the next place, because they said to me, we can't arrest you here. You've got to go to Charing Cross. That's the nearest police station. And the funny thing is, 2 police officers saw me sitting outside of New Scotland Yard and walked up and said, what's going on here? And my solicitor turns around and goes, can you please arrest this man, my solicitor? Because the police officer just looked at me and went, because I'm in a zero gravity chair lying down, as you can see in that video, because I can't stand up for long. And a police officer just looked at me and said, nah, we're not arresting you, go away. And then my solicitor's gone, you haven't even heard what he's done wrong. Why don't you want to hear it? And they would have gone, nah, not interested, jog on, move along. And I was told to go to Charing Cross, and that incident you've seen was at Charing Cross, where I said what I said, which is I declare myself as a supporter of Palestine Action. And the police turned around and said, well, thank you for coming in. You can leave because we know who you are and someone will be in touch. And someone was in touch in the evening, and it was the anti-terrorism squad from Hammersmith who saw me. We had an interview for about 45 minutes. And I asked them if they're going to arrest me in Charing Cross. They said no. And for the 4th time of the day, I asked them if they're going to arrest me under the anti-terrorism laws at Hammersmith. They also declined and kicked me out of Hammersmith police station and said, you're trying too hard to get arrested, Mr. Shafiei, go home. So I left. And that was the interactions with the police. And I'm grateful to the police, who were very careful about my well-being. They recognize the fact that I am very unwell, and they treated me with absolute courtesy. There was no levels of aggression, which is sometimes seen by some police officers. But my interactions with the police in Charing Cross Police Station, oh, I forgot to say, the two people that were there to arrest me were actually the same two people who were looking after me on the 27th of March when I got hit by a car. Just 33,000 police officers in the whole of the metropolitan area. And I end up with the same two police officers who happened to look after me and who were part of my escort for the day, because I nearly died on the 27th of March. And when that happens, the police send two officers to basically document the evidence of you dying or living. And these two police officers, that's why we were laughing. It's like, yeah, of course I know them, because I fed them. I gave them tea, or I didn't. My family who were there looking after me ended up buying sandwiches for them, cakes, teas, coffees, because at the end of the day, they're human, same as us, you know. And anyway, I've spoken too much. Let's talk about other things.
Well, let me just bring on your tweet here. We'll bring this up on screen. A Bastille Day to Remember, or how I tried to get arrested and failed spectacularly. And you go through this. And what's also interesting here is the statement, which you posted publicly. This is the statement that you gave to the police, Haas. We've got that up on screen. People can screenshot if they like. So that's a matter of public record. You've also tweeted this out at the time. And it's quite extraordinary here. And you really lay out your legal challenge in a way, but this is really a civil liberties statement, if anything. And the part of this, Haas, I want to get your comment on this, that is just extraordinary, is the last paragraph of the first page. It says, in the court case of R versus Jones, 2003, the appeals court examined actions taken by activists at the Fairford Air Base to hinder Britain's involvement in the Iraq War. And none other than Keir Starmer himself defended those actions back in 2003, arguing in court that breaking the law to prevent war crimes is not only lawful, but also morally justified. That is just an extraordinary bit of irony there, Hawes. But tell us more about, you know, what is the core thing that you're after here? Like what do you want to see happen in the end?
So I've done what I've done out of a sense of what I think is right or wrong, and people need to do things when they believe what they're doing is righteous. And I definitely believe that what I'm doing, which is standing up for the right of people to demonstrate and the right of people to stop murder. And it is absolute murder that's taking place in Gaza. It's not two sides, it's one-sided. And I look upon the actions of Palestine Action as people who are stopping building drones that make the sound of babies to get people to come to a crying baby and then get shot in the head. 2 days ago, a drone that is made by Elbit System put a bullet in the head of a 4-year-old child. So it is absolutely incumbent of every single person with a moral compass and anyone who's quite happy to die on the hill, and this is a hill that I'm willing to die on, go to prison for, to do what they think is right. It is blatantly obvious, as by case law in the past, that to stop war crimes, to stop genocide, you should do it. And I am not a legal expert. I didn't choose this line and thought of going forward, but I am a Brit, and I am a great believer in my country, and I love the rules and regulations and the balance of power that we have in our country, where the laws are there to protect the citizens. And it is our right, enshrined in June 1215, in Magna Carta, that says that we are going to be judged by a jury of our peers, so that no king, no crown, no baron, no one can deny me my rights. And I'm looking at it as a situation where I'm quite happy to say that I am committing the crime. I then want to be judged by a jury of my peers. And a jury of my peers will decide if I'm guilty or not. And I'll leave that judgment to any Brit to decide whether they believe what's happening in Gaza is acceptable or not, and whether they want to see this continuation of arms flowing directly from here to Israel. And more importantly than just the arms, it's the actual political cover that's given to Israel that normalizes genocide. The fact that our Prime Minister, who believes that it is morally justified and lawful, as he has defended, to stop war crimes, is now the main cheerleader after the American state for the war on the children of Gaza. So that's where I'm at. And as I said, I'm not a legal expert, but I am a passionate human being that does not like what I see happening in my country. We are literally being sleepwalked into tyranny. That's what's happening here, because Palestine action today, who's going to be next tomorrow? Who's going to be the next person that wants to stand up for something that can get prescribed? And if we make life easy for these people, the government, to do these things, then they will definitely take advantage of this situation to shield whatever interests they want. It just so happens to be the state of Israel and what they're doing to people. And I'm not happy with what my country is doing. I'm not happy with Britain going down this line where we are effectively co-opted and complicit in the death of children in Gaza. What I will say to you is this, quite simply: the DNA fingerprint of every kid and woman and elderly person killed in Gaza holds the DNA of Donald Trump, Biden before him, Sunak, Starmer, David Lammy, David Cameron. These are the 6 people who are, and obviously the American versions of Marco Rubio and Antony Blinken. These people are the ones who've normalized this genocide. And if the British public don't stand up now, today, and do the right thing and make sure that this does not quietly go into the night with authoritarian laws brought in to stop people from talking, then it's the end of British society. We just have to accept the norm that they put in front of us. We might as well not bother being Englishmen anymore. We might as well just become slaves to the system.
Huss, we're just about out of time, but I'd just like to get a very quick comment from you on this, because this issue of juries is absolutely vital that people get to grips with. And of course, we've got this program led by Lord Leveson to remove juries from more and more degrees of criminal court case conduct. And, you know, what you're effectively doing here is relying on the power of the jury to annul bad law. And in this case, and this is a core constitutional principle that most people aren't aware of. And I just wanted to get a final thought from you on that, because it is fundamental, as you say, to our liberties.
Yeah. I mean, to be absolutely clear, the day the juries are no longer required for cases is the day that British law ends up becoming a third world a country. We will become the repressive regime from somewhere else that is not Britain. We are the home of democracy for the majority of the world. If you take into account the United States of America, Canada, India, Australia, New Zealand, almost all the Commonwealth countries, all of these have at the bottom, at the heart of all this, something called the English common law. And part of an English common law, and it's enshrined in law, in a bill in 1689, the Bill of Rights, is the right to a jury. Now, just because they've got a backlog of 67,000 cases for Crown Courts, it doesn't give you the right to go and get rid of juries. What it means is you need to invest in a much larger judiciary. You need to create a lot more courts. You need to have a lot more judges. You need to increase the footprint to deal with the Crown prosecution cases. What you shouldn't be doing is taking a history that we have now spread to the whole world of jury, to put it in a bin now because it's inconvenient, because you know as well as I do, Patrick, yeah, that there are laws in place for criminal damage. You don't need to go and create anti-terrorism laws. If you smash up something, there's a law for that already. You don't need to turn it into a terror law. So that's the situation we're in. This is an overreach by the government, and it needs to be put in the bin. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to fight for what I think is right for British people, more than anything else. If it wasn't Palestine action, it was something else, I'd still be jumping up down the throat of this government, because this is the problem here. They're trying to change the way things are done so they can have an easier life than the one they've got at the moment, where we've got juries to defend and protect us. They cannot and must not be allowed to take out the jury system. It's been here since June 1215. You can't take 800 years and put it in the bin because it now doesn't suit you.
Yeah, and having heard that explanation, Mike, thank you, Hawes. I can see that Hawes's protest is much bigger than any one group that's been proscribed. This is a constitutional protest on principle. Hawes, Hussain, Hawes, Shafiei, thank you so much for joining us on the UK column. We'll hopefully follow up and continue this discussion in the future. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, that is brilliant. Let's move on then. And well, the other news from yesterday was the UK-German treaty, and Keir Starmer met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Downing Street yesterday following the signing of a new UK-Germany bilateral treaty described as the first of its kind. But it isn't really the first of its kind, is it, Patrick? At least such a suggestion is semantic, really, isn't it?
Well, there was previous pacts between Germany and Britain, Mike, and we only have to look at this illustrious celebration here. This is Neville Chamberlain returning to Britain with a document in hand after the 1938 Munich Agreement, Peace in Our Time, and that was about joining forces with Germany, and we have to tip our hats to a great historian and a journalist. His name is Kit Clarenberg, and he published this not so long ago, Mike, on May 4th, The Anglo-Nazi Global Empire That Almost Was, a little piece of history that's been swept under the rug. Let's take a look at the details of this. How deep did this go? Well, take a look. Basically, from Britain's perspective, the Munich Agreement was intended to be just the start of a wider process that would culminate in a, quote, listen to this, world political partnership, end of quote, between London and Berlin. 2 months prior, the Federation of British Industries, known as the Confederation of British Industry today, made contact with its German counterpart, the Reich Group Industry, and the two of them eagerly agreed their respective governments would enter into formal negotiations on an Anglo-Nazi economic integration. How about that for a little bit of history? And then just finally, and this is the depth of it here, the summit went swimmingly, and a formal conference in Dusseldorf was then scheduled. Coincidentally, though, however, Mike, later that evening in Berlin, something called the Kristallnacht erupted. This is one of the most infamous pogroms in history, but wait, that was no deterrent to continue discussions and meetings between the Nazis and the British at the time. They inked in a formal agreement on the creation of an international Anglo-Nazi coal cartel. So you can see it was all guns blazing for a German-British pact back then in 1938. How about that for pedigree on this issue?
Well, let's come closer to the modern time then. Another example of the non-uniqueness of this new agreement is the Trinity House Agreement signed last year by John Healey and German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. Now, that was a different German regime, but nonetheless, this brought the two nations closer together than ever before, they said at the time. Now, that agreement covered more or less the same areas as the current one, or the new one. So let's just have a look at these new long-range strike weapons that we're talking about, new boost for British industry. So there's this narrative. I mean, Starmer was elected on the basis of change. But this was the same. There's no change here. New cooperation to strengthen the eastern flank. This is also in the current agreement. Land industrial cooperation, protecting critical underwater infrastructure,
like the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. German planes in Scotland, new drones, new maritime uncrewed air system capabilities, new Ukraine support, joint work with partners to integrate air defense systems. And what was this all about? This was all about creating this, which is effectively the trifecta, the European level trifecta that is driving European defence, and this was happening even before Trump's election, would be the point that I'm making here. So, between Britain and France, with the 2010 Lancaster House Treaty, 2018 Sandhurst Treaties, 2018 Joint Vision Statement between Britain and Germany, the 2024 Trinity House Agreement, and then between Germany and France, the 2019 Aachen Treaty. And the intent was, as I say, to establish the UK, France and Germany as the main driving force for defence union in Europe, and the European Intervention Initiative is as the broader framework. So if we just look at that, this brings the trifecta there of Germany, France and Britain, together with several other European nations, to build this network of bilateral agreements, which creates this multilateral agreement. Now, at the time, Ursula von der Leyen's predecessor, Jean-Claude Juncker, put it that this patchwork of bilateral defence pacts will serve as a foundation for European defence, with Britain, France and Germany as the core. So that was what was being said at the time, and we shouldn't forget what Defence Minister Earl Howe said about it, that he signed in the UK into the European Intervention Initiative. The agreement states EI2 intends to contribute to ongoing efforts within the European Union to deepen defence cooperation, notably PESCO, which of course, as we know, is a key part of the European Defence Union. So coming back to the present then, and yesterday there was a press conference held. Let's just have a listen to what Keir Starmer had to say.
Earlier today, we did something genuinely unprecedented. Building on our new agreement with the EU, together we signed the Kensington Treaty, the first ever major bilateral treaty between the United Kingdom and Germany, two great modern European nations. It's an expression of our shared aims and values. But more than that, it's a practical work plan, setting out 17 major projects where we will come together to deliver real results which will improve people's lives. So a historic treaty, a statement of intent and ambition. And we intend to do, amongst other things, as leading NATO powers in Europe, committing not only to our mutual defence, but also to maximise the benefits of our defence spending in the shape of more jobs, more growth and more security.
So, Patrick, more jobs, more growth. He's saying it's going to improve people's lives. It's not really going to improve some people's lives. It's going to improve people that manage to get jobs in the war industry. But what about all the people that are going to have to deal with, well, what are they going to have to deal with? Because somehow this has to be paid for.
Oh, haven't you heard? They discovered oil in Germany, Mike. It's there's a big desert in the middle of Germany, and they discovered oil. So I guess that's going to pay for it. And they discovered gold in the Netherlands. So don't worry about all that. That's just a formality, Mike. No, it means austerity. It's going to be deficit spending. It's going to be tightening the economy, and it's going to mean austerity for social services, pensions, all sorts of other things that people in Europe require, especially people who are vulnerable. That's all going to be on the chopping block to pay for rearming Europe. That's the plan.
Okay, well, anyway, the question is, what's in this treaty? Well, there are 17 main areas of cooperation, they say. Firstly, Ukraine, of course, Ukraine recovery and reconstruction. Well, Mark was talking about that last week. Next is the Trinity House Defence Agreement that we've talked about, which includes, as we say, lots of unautonomous vehicles, strengthening the eastern flank and submarine hunting capabilities. And then the real focus, strengthening defence, industrial and export cooperation. Another one is Strategic Science and Technology Partnership, which is all about AI and the so-called critical tech. So this is war related as well, because of course, autonomous vehicles and so on is right at the heart of this. They single out the Western Balkans for particular focus to support stability and security. And naturally, that means the opposite, because that's more or less evidenced by the fact, for example, that anywhere conflict and security and stability money goes, it's the conflict which is secured and stabilized, not any kind of peace. Now, China is not specifically mentioned because they instead wrap that up in the language of Indo-Pacific cooperation. strengthening coordination on regional maritime security, they say. And of course, that means war with China. Biosecurity, naturally, is in the list, including preparing for new and re-emerging highly pathogenic pathogens and setting up joint exercises and an emergency support system between the UK and Germany. And strategic sustainable development partnership is included to advance the 2030 agenda. The rest is more or less just fluff. So there's nothing genuinely unique about this agreement with Germany other than it's another step towards a plan which has really been in motion since 1986. And of course, we're talking about the Defence Union on that. And if you want to understand the timeline since 1986 on this, get onto the UK Column website and look for EU military union or EU military integration, and you'll find lots there. Okay, let's move on. If you like what the UK Column does, you would like to support us, the link to take you to the page with all the details is on the front page of the UK Column website, which of course is at ukcolumn.org. We absolutely need your continued support, and thank you again to everybody that is offering that. Now, if you're not able to support us financially, then please do share material, because that kind of help absolutely helps as well. Now, 7 o'clock tonight, Germ is speaking to Charles himself once again on the Weekly Banter, so join us for that. Another reminder, the tickets for the York event, which is on Saturday the 18th of October this year, go on sale on the 20th of July, so please keep that date in your diary and pick up a ticket if you possibly can, or more than one if there's more than one of you going. Another quick reminder of Sandy's event, or an event that Sandy's speaking at, and Andrew Bridgen as well, the Dissident Southwest meetup, which is taking place this weekend. Details on screen at the moment and in the show notes. And Patrick, very quickly then, next Friday the 25th, in the Seven Stars Hotel in Totnes, you'll be introducing Andrew Bridgen.
Yeah, that's going to be, I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, Andrew's something that we really admire over the years for taking principled stands, especially out of Parliament as well. And he's going to be telling his story and talking a lot about the real important issues, the fundamental issues of freedom of speech, civil liberty, freedom of the press, and health freedom. All of that is going to be spoken. And there'll be a good Q&A session as well at the end of that. So I think it's going to be a nice gathering. Tickets are going fast. There's only a few left. So if you want to attend that, we'd love to see you there.
Super, fantastic. Mark, let's come on to you now. And last week you mentioned the Red Pill Conference, which was taking place over the weekend, and you managed to join that virtually.
And that is really driven home in this next illustration. Of the 17 sustainable and development goals, number 4 of those 17 under Agenda 2030 is education. And this slide from Alex Newman explained that a little. By 2030, goal number 4, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles. There's that globalist buzzword in globalese, sustainable, human rights, gender equality, and so on and so forth, promotion of culture of peace, global citizenship, and so on and so forth along those lines. So Alex really explained very clearly, and this was one of several highlights at the conference, that education is not what you think it is under the Castle social and emotional learning SEL rubric there. Now, another presenter was the well-known New American writer, William F. Jasper, an acquaintance of mine over the years. And he gave a presentation, as this slide indicates, on the brink of a United Nations world government wake up. He's senior editor at the New American. And there's some highlights here that follow. The map that he showed is quite striking, and I happen to have it here. Now, when you look at this map, you'll see, beg your pardon, you'll see some green circles. Those are World Bank projects, and there's all sorts of other indicators on the map, symbols, that is, International Monetary Fund offices, which are all over Africa and Central and South America. And there are United Nations peacekeeping operations, significant in Europe and Asia, very heavy in Africa. Again, Africa seems to be a focal point, some in the Western Hemisphere. But what William F. Jasper was basically driving home by showing this map and through his overall presentation was the UN is showing a very broad global presence now in terms of where they have offices, in terms of the diversity of their operations, and in terms of what they're up to. And this next slide is a major focal point that Bill presented on what the UN is up to. And this is a relatively new development, he said, a UN tax on shipping to fund global tyranny. That's the headline of this New American article. And it shows the insignia that I inserted there of the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, which again is one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And that's a carbon-based tax in terms of the carbon that shipping would contribute to the atmosphere. The tax would be a way of offsetting that, according to Mr. Jasper. And beg your pardon, I had to pick something up. This one last slide that Bill presented also, I'll call it an allegation. It's interesting, though, who Director General Tedros was called an advocate of a terrorist group back in his home state of Ethiopia, according to this news item that I found in the wake of the Red Pill Conference. It's an allegation, but according to Bill Jasper, there's a lot of truth to it, that Tedros has a very checkered past. And of course, he's now Director General of the World Health Organization, who may be enforcing a second public health emergency of international concern if there's another pandemic and things like that. There are other things. I do have an upcoming article on this latest Red Pill Conference that'll talk about many other things, the real truth behind the animal rights movement. There's some shocking things there, and things in the high-tech world and whatnot. I can talk a little bit more about this in extra, however. So for now, we'll leave it at that in the interest of time. And back to you guys.
Just a quick question, Mark, on the story you said on the New American about a UN tax on global shipping. Is that an idea or a proposed idea for a tax, or is that an actual tax that's currently being levied on shipping by the United Nations?
Mr. Jasper put it as something imminent, not necessarily fully implemented, but imminent.
How would they be able to impose that, because the UN doesn't really have legislative or powers of taxation against sovereign nation states?
Well, according to Mr. Jasper, the UN Assembly is something of a legislative body, just like the executive and the World Court is the judicial, the executive being the Security Council. Mr. Jasper is saying those powers are quickly being developed and worked on a very ongoing basis to develop the ability to do that. So he's basically saying it's all but ready to go. And I'll be exploring that more in an article I'll have coming up on UK Column. I'll get to the bottom of that because that's a very good question, of course. Just how much authority do they actually have? And that's something to nail down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Let's now come on to back to the UK and back, sadly, onto a sort of war topic because the Royal United Services Institute has announced that its Deputy Director General, Malcolm Chalmers, will be leaving after 17 years. And, well, that in itself may not seem that interesting, but in fact, he is going to join Secretary of State for War, John Healey, as John Healey's Strategic Defence Advisor. And my question is that Strategic Nuclear Advisor, I wonder, because Chalmers is on record as advocating the use of nuclear weapons against Russia as a live option to force a Russian capitulation to NATO on the Ukraine conflict. So in May 2022, he proposed in the Financial Times, also republished on the Russi website here, that a Cuban missile crisis on steroids with Russia over Ukraine might be the best option to force Russia to capitulate. And he wrote that NATO's flexible response doctrine during the Cold War planned for first use of nuclear weapons in response to an invasion by superior Russian conventional forces with the aim of stopping the war before too much territory was overrun. If it did come to this, he wrote, operational pressure for preventive attacks on one side and growing public panic on the other would place a premium on leaders taking the right decisions at the right time in conditions of imperfect information and high emotions. It would feel like the Cuban Missile Crisis on steroids, although he did admit in that article that it would be a moment of extreme peril. But he said that a nuclear crisis of this sort could make it easier for leaders to make difficult compromises. So anyway, in March in this year, then he spoke to Shasnak Joshi, defense editor at The Economist. Let's have a listen to some of what he said.
This is very serious, but of course you can limit the damage further by what you attack. You don't, in a demonstration shot, you probably wouldn't attack a city or somewhere where there's large casualties. You'd attack somewhere where the casualties are much more limited, and maybe an isolated military base or whatever it might be. The UK can fire a single missile from a submarine. It doesn't have to fire them all at once. It can fire a single missile with a single warhead. So that can be a demonstration shot. Where there's, I think, a difference, an argument, is whether that submarine could then move more rapidly enough before the Russians or whoever the adversary was could take it out. And I think there's a good argument to be made that given that this is precisely the sort of thing the Royal Navy is likely to be planning for, that they would be able to do that.
Now, I don't know what you think about that, Patrick, but this entire argument seems completely nutty to me. But just to put this in perspective, he was assigned to prepare one of the Ministry of Defence's strategic aspects of the Strategic Defence Review 2025. And as I say, he's now been called to serve as a strategic advisor to Healey. Where does that leave us?
Oh, maybe we should just, maybe theoretically, if we shoot one nuke and it'll send a strong message to the Russians and stop them from taking territory. I think Russians took quite a bit of territory already in Ukraine. So all of that has amounted to not much other than what he's talking about. Mike, there's a word for it. It's called MAD, M-A-D. Look it up. The nuclear doctrine from the Cold War. I mean, do these people read history? Do they study nuclear strategy in terms of mutually assured destruction? It seems like all of that doesn't apply to these people.
Indeed.
Yeah, amazing.
What's Trump been up to with Putin?
Well, so where's the Ukraine conflict at? Here we are. Let's bring the man himself up on screen. There is the President of the United States. And basically the message to Putin is 50 days or else. He's giving him a 50-day ultimatum. Trump loves issuing these ultimatums. 60 days here, 50 days there, 30 days there. So the last time Trump issued an ultimatum, it was to the Iranians, and it was 60 days. 60 days. And what happened on the 61st day during intense final negotiations? A sneak attack backed by the United States, by the Israelis against Iran, followed by an attack against Iran's civilian nuclear power centers and bases. So what can Russia expect after 50 days? Are they planning another Operation Spider's Web? I'm going to bet you 110%. That's what this is. So there's going to be some kind of a fancy sneak attack to re-up Zelensky's mandate as a dictator, keep the money flowing and new weapons. And guess what that means for defense stocks in Europe, Mike?
Through the roof.
Through the roof, and the United States as well. Those companies doing very well from this open-ended war. The only problem is, Mike, Ukraine doesn't have an infinite number of soldiers. This is where the West is having some teething issues. They don't know what to do. So Zelensky has announced they're thinking about, if they haven't already, possibly conscripting women. Okay, so that's new. And Sweden, getting into the spirit of NATO, they've decided they're going to raise the conscription level for men to the age of, wait for it, 70 years old. They want to get more experienced officers. So that's the payoff for joining NATO for Sweden and Finland. And I mean, we could go on and on. So look, Trump doesn't have any negotiations. There's no deal there. This is going to be chalked up as another failure for Donald Trump. Meanwhile, they're struggling to get Patriot missile batteries to the Ukrainians, but Russia has moved into the air war phase. And this is Russia's forte. I predict, Mike, if we're into the air war phase, you might see an abrupt halt to this conflict in the not so near future. That is my hunch. That's our hope. I'm sure many Ukrainians would like to see that happen as well.
Okay, and where does that take us then?
Well, on that subject, sorry, but we forgot to show this really excellent op-ed here. And again, we're showing you a banned article. If you're in Britain, you're not allowed to read RT.com. So we thought we'd put this screenshot, this dangerous op-ed here, which was written by Vitaly Rimshin. And it says Trump's ultimatum isn't an ultimatum and Moscow knows it. In other words, Moscow doesn't really care what Trump says. They know that he has lost the plot. They're just going to move on with their objectives and aims.
Okay, and let's just bring us up to date with Syria.
Well, you saw what happened earlier this week, Mike, in Israel dropped a few bombs on Damascus against Jolani. A surprise for everybody because Jolani just had been previously basically pledging his, admiration, loyalty to the state of Israel, wanting to normalize relations. So without going into the details of this very complicated story, what you're seeing there is a lot of staged theater, okay? But this is an important piece of information that everybody needs to understand. This is a great analysis here, and I want to thank Freddie Ponton for supplying this to 21st Century Wire. David's Corridor, Israel's foothold in the heart of the Arab world. Now, this is a very good breakdown if you are confused and you don't know exactly what's happening here and why it's happening. Check out this article. This is a great piece of analysis here. And as you can see, David's Corridor is that strip of southern Syria that's going to connect the Golan Heights, which are occupied by Israel, all the way up to through the Druze-held areas and into the Kurdish-held areas of northeastern Syria, with a straight shot into Iraqi Kurdistan and right at Iran's border here. And a great piece of analysis here. And there's a tweet embedded in this that people should pay attention to by a Middle Eastern analyst named Ibrahim Majid. And let's take a look at that. Let's take a closer look at that tweet. And that's the image there. That is David's Corridor. You see the blue part. We'll bring a label there. That's David's Corridor. Strategically, what you're looking at here is a new Sykes-Picot agreement right in front of our eyes. But the difference between this Sykes-Picot and the last one is the borders of this are going to be drawn in blood. The U.S. and Israel and Britain and France, the allies of those two countries, they want to redraw the map of the Middle East. And so you're looking at a sectarian bloodbath that is about to kick off. It has already kicked off in Syria as well as Lebanon, and the next will be Iraq. And this is right here, this is what it's all about. We'll bring this on screen. It's about preparing the region for the Greater Israel Project. Now, that's not going to be occupied by Israelis, but in that red zone, client states, totally subservient to the United States and Israel. And that's what the Greater Israel Project amounts to. And as you can see, it extends quite a bit. So people need to understand that's a reality. Go to that article at 21st Century Wire, watch it, read it, and you'll get a lot of answers.
Okay, thank you for that, Patrick. Okay, now let's come back to the UK and censorship. And Ofcom has announced a discussion paper for the next censorship round. It's all about how to deal with deepfakes. Now, this is a second discussion paper on the topic, and this time it's going to focus on so-called attribution measures. So that includes watermarking tools, provenance metadata schemes, AI labels, and context annotations, as they talk about it. Now, they are saying that these measures are designed in one way or another to attribute certain types of information to a piece of content. For example, information about who created it, how and when it was created, and in some cases, whether the content is accurate or misleading. They say that the sharing of certain types of deepfakes is regulated under the Online Safety Act 2023, but that they will draw on the paper's insights to inform their policy development and supervision of regulated services. Now, my question is, what are the chances, Patrick, that in the effort to deal with deepfakes, that real content, which might be counter-narrative, is labeled as deep fake or as something similar, and we end up with this being a major sort of spoke in the censorship wheel?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you can temporarily label something as being deep fake or disinformation, and it creates enough confusion early on, especially in a crisis moment. And that's when if the narrative is able to push through, because counter narratives are being suppressed using these tools. This is absolutely terrifying, what they're planning to do. And it's all going to be automated under AI.
Right.
That's the crazy part about it.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that Ofcom isn't dealing with, and which I, for one, would consider an online harm, is regime-led propaganda operations. Now, the UK column, amongst others, has been highlighting this for years. Let's put that up with our coverage of Integrity Initiative, also Andy Price's Foreign Office Counter Disinformation Media Development Program, and the successor to the Integrity Initiative, the Zinc Network. But we have to say a massive well done to Declassified UK for their latest on the Zinc Network. And they're saying that the UK government is secretly paying foreign YouTube stars to publish propaganda videos. Declassified can reveal a 3-year investigation has found that online influencers are made to sign legal contracts banning them from disclosing the government's involvement. And they're saying that Whitehall officials give feedback on each video before the influencers are allowed to publish them. The work is coordinated by a London-based media agency, they point out, called Zinc Network Limited, on behalf of the Foreign Office, in a deal worth nearly £10 million of public money. Well, I thought that's an interesting figure. Let's have a look and see how much Zinc Network has received from the Foreign Office. So let's go to the UK column's Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office spending website. That we can see on screen here, between September 2019 and June 2022, Zinc Network received £1.4 million from FCDO. So then where did Declassified get the 10 million figure from? Well, this is where care is needed, because the FCDO has never been very consistent about how it names the recipients of its money. So actually there's another line item on the website, this time for Zinc Network Limited, covering the period May 2020 until January 2025. And the total financial support over this period comes to £37.2 million. So coming back to the Declassified article then, they're saying that in recent years, the company has recruited, that Zinc Network has recruited hundreds of internet celebrities for various clients, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, a key battleground in the information war with Russia. And they say that Zinc staff tried to find, quotes, the most relatable influencers and ensure that every video feels authentic. And crucially, the influencers, as they've said, were instructed to sign non-disclosure agreements prior to being told of Foreign Office involvement. And as a result, anyone watching these videos would have no idea that they'd been funded and signed off by UK government officials. Now, they quote a former employee saying that by targeting younger voters, Zinc Network's campaign amounted to interference in a sovereign country's internal affairs. Now, look, this is exactly what the term media development means. UK Column was one of the first to talk about Andy Price and the Counter Disinformation and Media Development Program in the Foreign Office. Well, Andy Price moved on from heading that up, and he was replaced with this guy, Darren Boyling. Now, of course, we've no idea whether Darren Boyling is still heading up the Counter Disinformation Program, because we're not allowed to know, and freedom of information requests are refused on the basis of national security, and that in itself demonstrates this is kind of a spooky operation. But nonetheless, the key point here is, so that media development is not, Patrick, just about the training of journalists that we've talked about many times in the past, and the use of those trained journalists to promote British narratives and NATO narratives from foreign countries. It's also about grabbing influencers on social media. And it's unbelievably dangerous. It's something that that everybody in the country should be aware of.
Paid propaganda, all the things they accuse the Russians of doing, they're doing subversively. And this is also about sowing division in the Balkans, Mike.
Yes.
In Bosnia-Herzegovina, those areas are listed as target areas. And so is there another war brewing in the Balkans? Are we going to see another sort of bloody sectarian conflict break out?
Well, like I say, it's not a coincidence that the Balkans specifically was mentioned in this new German-British treaty that we were talking about earlier on. I believe that's exactly what's going to happen.
And they'll use religious lines as well, Muslim, Christian, and maybe even feminist, gender. There'll be an LGBT element there that there normally is. So yeah, it's just incredible the level of propaganda. How well funded the propaganda is.
Yes.
What's the aggregate total of that? What, 39 million?
39 million for that one company, and of course they're part of a much larger network that's pulling the same kind of things. So more on that in the future, and we'll just finish by saying that, of course, the Ofcom censorship regime, added together with this type of influence operation, is what drives wars. And so we'll leave that there for now. Let's come back to you, Mark. And the question is, what's been going on in the United States on media-related stuff?
I just have one illustration to show here. It's a pretty pivotal thing. The U.S. Senate has voted to defund liberal, of course, they're known as liberal left-wing views, the public broadcasting system and National Public Radio, which operate under the aegis of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is directly federally funded. So this is a pretty pivotal thing. PBS, that system has existed a long time. This would be roughly akin to the BBC being defunded. And let's put that slide up one more moment, if we could, Mike. There's an important caveat in there that if signed into law, the House hasn't looked at this yet. Only the Senate has passed defunding PBS and NPR. The bill would fulfill a key conservative priority. This is according to lifenews.com, redirecting taxpayer dollars away from what many GOP lawmakers view as ideologically driven media. And an important twist, it comes weeks after Congress passed and Trump signed the big, beautiful bill, as it's been called. And one component of that, among many, many, is to defund Planned Parenthood, the abortion business, the abortion industry, and that organization is suing to recover the taxpayer funds. Another note on that is Planned Parenthood doesn't get direct funding due to the Hyde Amendment, named after the late Illinois Congressman Henry Hyde. They only get indirect federal funding through Medicaid reimbursement. So another twist on that is Planned Parenthood was only defunded for 1 year, and the American Family Association is actually critical of that, saying that defunding should have been much more extensive in terms of duration. But back to PBS, it's a pretty pivotal thing. We'll see what happens. That Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been on the airwaves in the U.S. a long, long time. They don't do altogether a bad job. Fox News is also ideologically driven the other direction. But of course, most of their money comes from advertising and subscriptions and things like that, and they don't get federal funds or taxpayer money. And the FCC isn't directly federally funded either. The Federal Communications Commission actually gets its money to operate from fees that are paid by the entities that it regulates. So there's no direct funding from the taxpayers to the FCC either. But it's a pretty notable development, that's for sure. and we can talk a little bit more about the ramifications in Extra. But I'll be watching this closely because this has been talked about many, many times, and this is the closest it's ever come. So back to you guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that. We're going to end the program today with a bit of amusing news, and that is that Plymouth has voted against having a direct elected mayor, but the turnout was just 19.11%. That most people's apathy in Plymouth was total, and they just couldn't be bothered. It was a pointless vote anyway, as we talked about on Wednesday. The Starmer regime has already stated that a city mayor is not an option for Plymouth because the Starmer's policy is for so-called metro or otherwise known as regional mayors, like Andy Burnham. So Plymouth Council leader Tudor Evans was very keen to be seen posing with Andy Burnham on Twitter as soon as the referendum result was announced, undoubtedly hinting at what he would like to have as his next job. Now, if you didn't see Wednesday's programme, take a look at Wednesday's programme for much more on this. This is an absolutely pivotal part of the devolution agenda that we are trying to explain to people the implications of at the moment. So
someone wants to be king of the Southwest.
Someone wants to be king of the Southwest. Someone whose name is Tudor, and maybe
bring that image back up on the screen again.
There, yes.
Are they related? Because looks like
they could be
father, son, two brothers. I mean, they're just doppelgangers, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Well, anyway, we will leave it there for today. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Patrick. And we will talk much more in Extra in about 5 minutes' time. If you're a UK Column member, stick with us. Otherwise, have a great weekend. And we will see you on Monday at 1 p.m. as usual. Bye-bye.